This audio is brought to you by Muslim Central. Please consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
غرباء 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 غرباء
Assalamu alaikum. This is Yasmin Mogahed, and you're listening to Serenity, streaming live on One Legacy Radio. Today we are asking that sort of golden question, which I think most people have asked at some point in their life, and that is, what is the secret to happiness? It's a question that you can find countless answers to in books, in self-help books, and lots of different types of inspirational speakers. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions about this question. But today I want to ask this question to you, and I want to discuss this question from a perspective, from the lens of Islam, the Islamic perspective, and then overall, what is the secret to happiness? I want, inshallah, to hear from you in the chat box. We will also be taking live calls today, inshallah ta'ala. But to begin to talk about any topic, we have to first define it. And in order to talk about happiness, it's very important that we first define what is happiness. I think one of the confusions that often happen is that there are different types of happinesses. There's the happiness, what we would call the sort of physical type of happiness, and then there's the internal type of happiness. Every organ of the body has a certain need, and in order for that organ to be happy, it needs to have that need fulfilled. So, for example, the mind is happy once the mind is stimulated. The stomach is happy when the stomach is fulfilled, is full, when it has food, and so on. The ears are happy when they listen to something pleasant. The eyes are happy when they see something beautiful. Similarly, the heart also feels happiness when it is fulfilled. So the question we have to ask is, what is happiness, and what type of happiness do we consider happiness? What type of happiness are we running after? And when you look at, for example, the difference between a human being and an animal, you'll find that for an animal, happiness is the physical happiness. Happiness is having enough to eat. Happiness is the, just being physically satisfied. Unfortunately, a lot of human beings live in that same way, or define happiness and pleasure in that same way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has compared, some human beings to animals, in fact, to cattle. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that they are like the cattle, nay, they are more astray. And if you think about what it is, an animal doesn't have anything else really to live for other than eating and sleeping and reproducing, and that's how an animal lives. But a human being has a higher level of happiness that it can reach. If a human being only strives for the physical happiness, the same type of happiness that an animal does, and it just ends there, then that human being becomes like an animal, but possibly even more astray, because that's all an animal can do. Whereas a human being has more potential, and if we're not fulfilling that potential, then we become even lower than the animals. An animal is obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what it's doing when it's eating or sleeping or reproducing. Whereas when a human being lives in that same way, we are not fulfilling the purpose of our creation. And so the question we have to ask then, what once you define happiness and you define those different types of happiness, it then brings us to the happiness of the heart, the internal happiness. So if every organ must have its fill in order to be fulfilled and to be happy, we want to look at the essence of happiness is that of the heart, the happiness of the heart. Now, there is no amount of food or listening to a certain sound or to fulfill that's going to fulfill the needs of the heart, because the needs of the heart are different than the needs of the eyes or the needs of the ears or the needs of the stomach. And so when we think that we might be happy because we ate a really wonderful chocolate cake, really that's the happiness of the stomach. But the happiness of the heart can only come through one means, and that's by nourishing the heart with the only food that nourishes the heart. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the only food that nourishes the heart is the remembrance of Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. Indeed, in the remembrance of God do the hearts find itmi'nan, that peace and that satisfaction. That true happiness only comes in the remembrance of God. If you live your life and you're distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you're distant from the remembrance of God, you won't be able to experience that true happiness. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, that when أعرض عن ذكري فإن له معيشة ضنكا. In Surah Taha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever turns away from my remembrance, for him is a life that is narrowed down, a miserable life. معيشة ضنكا. This is a life of unhappiness, a narrow, miserable life. And Allah is telling us here that in one ayah, Allah is telling us the only source of true happiness, which is the dhikr, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the other ayah, Allah is telling us what happens to those people who turn away from the remembrance of Allah. Oftentimes we have this idea that if I don't remember Allah in this life, I'm going to pay for it later, right? That if I'm not obeying Allah, or if I'm not remembering Allah, or if I'm being heedless of my relationship with my Creator, I'm going to pay for it later. It's kind of like play now and I'll pay later. It's the whole idea of the credit card, right? We just use the card and we worry about paying later, even if we don't really have the money to pay. And so we think that we're going to play now and have all this fun now, but we're only going to have to pay for it later, meaning in the hereafter. But this is actually not true. In fact, the payment or the punishment of not remembering God actually starts now. It starts here. It starts in this life. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. Whoever turns away from my remembrance, for him is a miserable life here as well, here before the hereafter. That in this life before the next. It's an illusion. The type of the idea of pleasure that we have that's sold, right? That's sold in ads, that's sold all around us. It's that if you really, really study and you look at the type of happiness, the type of pleasure that really is being sold in movies and in songs and in ads and billboards, you'll find that it's only the physical type of happiness, the physical type of pleasure, basically the animalistic pleasure. You look at something like the ad for Coca-Cola and it says open happiness. So the message here is that by drinking Coke, you'll be happy. What kind of happiness can you get from drinking a Coke? Well, at best, maybe the happiness of the stomach, right? Because Coke tastes pretty good. The happiness of the stomach, your mouth might be happy, your stomach might be happy. You might not be thirsty anymore for a little bit, or maybe get more thirsty because of the sugar, who knows? So that's at best the type of happiness that one could get. So what's being sold here is the idea. So it's not just, they're not just selling a product, but they're selling ideas, they're selling concepts. The concept that's being sold here is that physical happiness is ultimate happiness, because it just says open happiness. And so the idea is if you're physically fulfilled or if you have physical pleasure, that will make you happy. Inshallah, we will take a short break now, and when we return, we will open up the lines and inshallah share your thoughts on this question of what is the secret to happiness.
غرباء 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 غرباء.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Yasmin Mogahed, and you're listening to Serenity, streaming live on One Legacy Radio. We are talking today about the golden question of what is the secret to happiness. And we have talked first about the definition. Of course, before you can talk about a concept, before you can discuss a concept, you need to define it. And essentially, there are different forms of happiness. Every organ of the body needs to be fulfilled in order for it to feel happy and to experience pleasure. And the stomach has its own need in order to experience pleasure. The ears, the eyes, the mind. And the heart also has its food and also has its need in order for it to experience pleasure and to experience happiness. And as we are told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is only one type of food or type of need that can fill the heart and that can feed the heart, and that is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then that also brings us to the opposite of that fill and the opposite of that pleasure. What happens then to the heart? What happens then to the human heart when it does not have that need fulfilled? And you know what, we look at Surah Taha where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. Whoever turns away from my remembrance, and for him is a narrow, miserable life. مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. We look at our lives oftentimes and we feel this sort of narrowness internally. We might feel that emptiness or that lack of pleasure, even if the body has pleasure, right? Even the stomach may be full, you know, the ears are happy, the eyes are happy, the physical needs might be fulfilled, but there's still something missing. And when we feel that way, oftentimes we don't know why. And what happens, what usually human beings do, is they try to seek other types of happiness, in order to fill the emptiness of the heart. So this is why we find the tendency in us humans to run after things to fill us. Why do we get caught up in drugs or alcohol? Why do we get caught up and have these obsessive types of relationships with people, or even with our jobs, with our careers, with money itself? Why do we end up having these very unhealthy attachments? Ultimately, we're trying to find that happiness of the heart, trying to fill that emptiness that's inside of us. And that emptiness cannot be filled in any other way except in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As is the statement of Ibn Taymiyyah, who said that taking the dhikr away from the heart is like taking a fish out of water. What happens to a fish that comes out of the water is, not only does it eventually die, but it's this very painful sort of suffocation that happens to the fish. And this is what happens to the human heart. That when a person lives their life where God is not part of the equation, God, only in a very superficial way is God part of the equation. Sometimes we live Islam, we live our religion, we live our lives in a way where our understanding is very ritualistic and very superficial, in a sense, where we might be physically praying or fasting or doing kind of the ritualistic things of our faith, but God is really not part of the equation at any deep level in our lives. We live our lives how we want. That's not what we talk about. That's not what we think about. And ultimately, when I get up in the morning and I think, how am I going to live my life today? How am I going to spend my day? What am I going to do? How am I going to dress? How am I going to act? What am I going to say? We always have a reason. We always have a motivation. And the question is, what is our motivation? If our motivation, our motivation is going to be that thing that we're really, really focused on. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't, there's this research that one author did who wrote a book called Landscapes of the Soul. And basically what this man did is he went through and interviewed people from all different faiths who he found across the board, all different faiths, all different religions. He found across the board that the people said they believed in God. They had this belief, but it actually had no bearing on how they lived their lives. That it wasn't actually relevant, and this was not, restricted to just one religion, but it was across the board, all different denominations of Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism, and all the way across the board. And so we find this tendency in Muslims as well, that we say we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we say La ilaha illallah, and we may say it many times a day if we're praying, just the fact that we're praying. We say we love and follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but ultimately it has no bearing on how we actually choose to live, on what we choose to buy and not buy, and what we choose to wear and not wear, and what we choose to say and how we say it, and how we act, and what are our priorities and what we're running after. Ultimately has nothing to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As a result of that, we end up starving the heart, we starving the soul, because we are not remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives at any deep level, and this is remembrance of Allah. The dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be in many forms, not just on the tongue, but also the limbs can remember Allah. When we're praying, we're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our bodies. When we're fasting, when we're giving zakat, there's, every part of our body can be in an act of worship. And so when we're not remembering Him in these different ways, we are actually starving the heart from its food. Inshallah, we can open up the lines shortly to your calls. We want to hear from you. The number again to call in is 714-988-8182. I want to hear from you. How do you answer this question of what is the secret to happiness, and more from a practical level, maybe from your own experience. What have you learned from your own experience about happiness? What has been the secret to happiness for you in your life? And sometimes people have points in their life where things turn around, and it may go in one direction or another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيْرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيْرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Indeed, God does not change the condition of a people until they change what is inside themselves. This is a very powerful statement, and it can go both ways, that Allah does not change our external condition until we first change our internal condition. That applies to both directions. So our condition externally does not change from bad to good unless we change what is inside ourselves. If there's something about our condition that we do not like and that we want to change, the formula for that is to change internally. But it also works the other way as well, and that is that if our condition, if it's good, it will not change to bad unless we change internally from good to bad. So there is a direct relationship inside. There's a direct relationship between what we look like inside and what we look like outside. And when I say look like outside, I don't mean how attractive our body is or isn't. What I mean is that what our hearts look like inside is going to be manifest in how we act and in also how we view the world, and in also how the world is to us. So our actual reality, our actual situation, our actual circumstance is affected by how we are inside. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيْرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيْرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah does not change the condition of a people externally until they change what is inside of themselves. And subhanAllah, you will find this to be true even in how you see the world. You'll notice that the people who are inside of themselves very maybe dishonest, they will see the world as being dishonest. When you inside of yourself are holding on to hatred and envy and these types of diseases, you will see the world through that lens, and you'll see the world as being a very hateful place, as a very ugly, negative place, and everybody is kind of out to get you, and everybody's jealous of you. It's an indication of what you are inside. Similarly, when inside it's clean, you see the world as clean. You assume the best of people. This is the world that you experience is very much a reflection of what you are inside. Now, inshallah, I'm going to share some of the reflections in the chat box. The lines, again, are still open. We ask you to call, share your experiences, your questions, and your reflections. Someone writes, I feel calmer, I feel more at peace. I hope one day that I will find a person to make me more happier, but my happiness will not depend on him, but on him, capital H. The idea is that first, that alhamdulillah, she feels happier, and she's looking for a companion who can then, increase that happiness, inshallah. I think you make a good point when you say that your happiness will not be dependent on him, but it's a very, very fine line, and I think it's something that a mistake that a lot of us fall into, of depending on another person for our happiness. And of course, happiness only dependent on our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have a caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, inshallah, that we'll hold on that until we can get the call through. But in speaking about the one really important aspect of happiness to focus on is, where does happiness come from, but also, what are we dependent on for happiness? I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as human beings is we depend on the creation for happiness. And, when we say the creation, that includes other people, that includes money, that includes material things. Anytime we are dependent on the creation for happiness, we will never really be happy. And our so-called happiness will always be unstable. The definition of how I feel or who I am or my self-worth should never be in the hands of the creation, because of course that's something unstable. And so it is a very good point, and thank you for sharing that. Layla, someone else writes, MashaAllah, Layla, I'm glad to hear. Inshallah, you will get the perfect man, in quotes, with all his shortcomings, but perfect for you sooner than you know it. One thing that I want to emphasize about the search for the perfect companion is it's so important to understand why it is that we get married, why it is that we look for companionship. Ultimately, if we understand companionship in the right light, then it will always be good for us, inshallah ta'ala. The mistake of that we make in terms of looking for companionship is that we tend to think that we will find another person, that we will look in the companion for completion. So, for example, this idea that I'm not complete until I find X, Y, and Z companion to complete me. That in and of itself is, I think it's a mistake, because our completion comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're seeking your companion in order to fill you inside, then you will be disappointed, because the only thing that can fill you inside is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, the idea that you seek marriage, or you seek a spouse, or you seek companionship in order to make you happy. Now, there's a subtle point here, that the ultimate purpose of seeking companionship should never be to make me happy. And I know this is, it's something we're like programmed to believe that, the reason that I have this relationship is to make me happy. It's very dangerous because that should not be the ultimate purpose. Happiness is definitely sort of a fringe benefit, right? Insha'Allah ta'ala, it's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the ultimate purpose of companionship, and especially marriage, is actually to make you a better person. And that is much different than to make me happy. If I'm getting married for this person to fulfill me, then I'm in for a lot of disappointment potentially. But if I'm getting married knowing that the purpose of the marriage is actually to help complete my deen. To complete my deen is different than to complete me. And that's where a lot of people, I think, get confused about the hadith that says that marriage is, when you get married, you complete half your deen. Completing half your deen is not the same as completing half yourself. Completing half your deen is about character building. It's about being a better person. And so if you're getting married in order to make you to help you, enable you, to try to be a better person, then you've gotten the correct purpose. And then, of course, as a fringe benefit, the gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that qurrat ayun that Allah says, and that is that, in the dua where we say, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Here Allah is, in this dua that's in the Quran, Oh Allah, we ask Allah, oh Allah, make our spouses and our children the coolness of our eyes. And even when you look at the word that Allah uses, hablana, hablana comes from the word hiba, and hiba means a gift. So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to gift you, to give you a gift of this coolness of the eyes. A gift is very different than ultimate purpose. That my ultimate purpose in the relationship itself, when I'm entering into the marriage, when I'm entering into that relationship, the ultimate purpose should be completing my deen, meaning helping me to be a better person, character building. But the ultimate purpose is not so that I can, so that this person can fulfill me, or make me happy. It's extremely important, and you will find that if you have the right focus, inshallah, that then you will be able to be successful. One of the problems with having the wrong focus is that if I'm going into this relationship in order to be happy, or in order to fulfill me, or to fill me, well, as soon as it's not doing that, so suppose you get into the marriage and you start to face some challenges, which is inevitable. Once you start to face those challenges, well, you're not necessarily very happy while you're facing challenges. When you go to the gym and you're lifting weights, it's not necessarily very pleasurable to lift weights, but why do people do it? People do it to get stronger. They do it because there's a certain purpose. When you're working out or you're lifting, it's stressful, it's painful. Anybody who doesn't knows that it's painful at the time you're doing it, but there's a higher purpose of why you're doing it, and that is that you're building muscle. So in the same way, if you see it, yes, this may be a challenge. It may not be very fun right now. It may not be very easy right now. But if I saw that my ultimate purpose was to be a better person, and this is helping me in building that muscle and helping me in developing that, then I see it very differently. I don't run away from it immediately, but I see how I can grow from the situation itself. We have a caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Caller, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
How are you doing? I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing. It's getting cut off. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, inshallah. Go ahead with your question.
I wanted to share my experience.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. About 4 years ago, I started having anxiety because I didn't follow Islam. And it was really difficult because I didn't really understand anything about life or Islam or anything. So I started, my mom would help me, and she would help me like pray. She would tell me to do things that I didn't practice before. And it was a 1-year struggle because I would have anxiety and I would get panic attacks. But the only way that I got rid of my anxiety and I found true happiness was through God.
SubhanAllah. What do you mean by through God?
Excuse me?
And can you be specific, like what you mean by through God? What specifically helped you?
Okay, like anxiety is like a mental state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through counseling, and I would do breathing exercises and everything, and nothing would work. But when I started following things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do, like praying, wearing hijab, doing zikr, and all those things, like all the anxiety would like get out of my head, like slowly by slowly.
SubhanAllah, SubhanAllah. That's amazing. And it's like, thank you for sharing your story, because your story is just one of many manifestations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. Like we were saying earlier in the show, sharing the two of the ayat about the remembrance of Allah. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. That indeed in the remembrance of Allah do the hearts find peace and satisfaction. And you only found that peace and satisfaction through His remembrance. It's amazing to actually recognize, brothers and sisters, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if you look at the sister's story and you look at situations where people do suffer from anxiety, it's actually it's a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because imagine if this sister had not felt the anxiety to begin with. She would not have known that there was a problem internally. She would not have known that she needs to make a change, because it's the anxiety itself was a symptom of a problem with the heart, in her case. And of course there's different situations when it comes to some mental illness, but in her case sometimes the anxiety itself, or even the pain, the emptiness, the depression itself is a symptom of a problem that we have inside that we need to fix. And one example you can think of for this is just like in the physical world. If your body is being burnt, if you're standing by a stove, an open flame, and you don't notice that your elbow has touched the flame, what's going to make you move your hand, what's going to make you move your arm, is the pain of the fire. So that pain itself is actually a protection, is actually a mercy from God to let you know that you need to move your arm. It's to let you know that you need to make a change. And emotional, psychological pain is very similar. It's the anxiety itself, it's the pain itself, it's sometimes the sadness, or that actually is that. Just like the flesh, when it's being burned, it hurts. And similarly, this pain, it indicates to us there's something wrong, there's something I need to change. And again, Allah tells us, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. The situation that you don't like, the anxiety, this depression, the situation in your life, in your school, in your career, whatever situation it is that you don't like, it will never change until you change what's inside yourself. And when you change internally, you will find that externally things change, as the sister shared, subhanAllah. And those are the types of stories that we want to hear from you, real stories that inspire others, because it isn't just talk. The Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say something unless it's the truth. Allah only speaks the truth, and Allah tells us these things, and we know that for sure they are true. Now, you can, if you can call in, that's great. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, there's also, we're taking comments on the chat box. Someone writes, I have alhamdulillah recently started wearing hijab and doing more dhikr and ibadah, so remembrance and worship, and I always try to be better, and it has been easy, but the only thing I struggle with is that I can't stop wearing makeup. I only wear natural makeup, but I still know I'm doing haram with this, and it upsets me so much. Without talking specifically about any one matter or another, I think we can look at this from a wider lens, and let's look at it, more deeply, inshallah ta'ala, without getting into the rules of this or that. But ultimately, these things are just one of many examples of sacrifice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recently I was giving a talk about some of the natural consequences of love, and one of the natural consequences that you'll find in human love, for example, is the ability and the ease by which we can sacrifice for that which we love. And one of the best examples I can think of is a mother for her child. Any mother can relate to this, and anyone who's seen a mother or a father can relate to this. What you do for your child is, for example, if the child is up at night, is sick, nobody needs to pay a mother or a father to wake up at night and take care of their child. No one needs to pay them. There's no question about going in the middle of the night to the hospital if your child needs it. These are sacrifices that we are willing to make for our children because we love them. But you know what? It really takes a lot from us to be able to get up at night and pray. When anyone who knows what it's like to have a newborn, it's not just one time that you're up. You're up every night. You're up every night. Some mothers, the children who have colic, they cry continuously, sometimes for 16 hours straight. And it's just, the mother, she does it. The father, he does it. And it's just something that's naturally born out of love. We're able to sacrifice. We're able to sacrifice our sleep. We're able to sacrifice our own, our own comfort. Sometimes you'll go long periods of time as a mother, a new mother especially, you can't eat because you gotta, take care of the kid. And sometimes it's like, oh man, when was the last time I ate? We sacrifice these things when we love someone. And so we have to ask ourselves, when we're unable to sacrifice even small things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to really question the truth and the reality and the sincerity of our love. Because as we see with human love, it's natural to sacrifice. It's easy. It's something that, of course, even if it's difficult and we do it, we're still rewarded. But what I'm trying to get at here is that the strength of the love makes it easier. And one of those examples you see is what you do with your children. I mean, the amount of money, let's just look at that we sacrifice for the sake of our kids, send them throughout their life and send them to college alone. There's no question. It's not something that that's considered even. It's just a given. You sacrifice for those you love, and so we have to ask ourselves if our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really true, and why it is that we have so much trouble sacrificing for His sake. Part of it is the maybe the strength of the love, and also we have to have full faith, and it's part of it is also iman, having full faith that any time we sacrifice something for Allah's sake, He replaces it with something better. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we give up something for His sake, we let go of it for His sake, He will replace it with something better. That's iman. To really have faith in that is what we need in order to be able to give up these things that we may love. And when you give up what you love, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaces it with what is better, and Allah also beautifies you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَلَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. And you will not reach goodness until you are able to give of that which you love. It's one thing to give of that which you really don't care much about, of that which you're not really very attached to or you don't love very much. That's one thing. But the real test, and not just that, but the real beauty, the real internal beauty comes out and is made and is fashioned when you give of that which you love. That's the way that you reach birr. That's the way that you reach goodness and beauty internally, is by being able to let go of, being able to give of those things that you love. This is so important. Sacrifice is in order to elevate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to go up and to elevate in status, there needs to be sacrifice. And sacrifice by definition is giving up that which you love. Otherwise it wouldn't be a sacrifice. When you're getting up at night with your child, you're giving up your sleep, which we all know we love. Sometimes we can't even wake up for Fajr because we love it so much. But we give it up when we love something more. And that's what it is that we have to find something that we love more, something more worthy. And we give up that which we love, but we do it for the sake of that which we love more. So inshallah, we will take another short break now. And when we return, we will open up the lines again for your questions, your comments, your reflections on this question of what is the secret to happiness.
غرباء 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 غرباء.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Yasmin Mogahed, and you're listening to Serenity, streaming live on One Legacy Radio. We are asking the question today of what is the secret to happiness. I think there have been a lot of different types of answers to this question. We've talked about different definitions of happiness. There's the physical happiness, the happiness of the stomach when you eat something that you like, the happiness of the ears when you hear something that you like, the happiness of the eyes when you see something beautiful. And then there's the happiness of the heart, which is that true happiness, internal happiness. And the only thing that can make the heart happy and fulfill the heart is the remembrance of God. And we have shared, some different, I think, false definitions of what makes you happy, some myths about the secrets to happiness. And, I think one of them really is that another person can make you happy, or that there's something of the creation that can make you happy. If I have a certain amount of money, then I'll finally be happy. Or if I have a particular job or a certain house, if I can just be with this person, I would be happy. If I could just marry, this type of woman or this type of man, I would be happy. These are myths that really... The real true happiness can only come through the remembrance of God, through the nearness to God, because He's the one who created us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the heart, and it is for Him. It is something that He created for Him. It's made by Him and for Him. That's the only thing that will make a person, that organ of the body will only be fulfilled through its maker. And through being filled by the Maker. And the food of the heart is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that point is important when it comes to looking for a life partner and in thinking about marriage and how we think about marriage, why we want to get married. It is a very subtle but important point to understand that we do not get married in order for someone to fill us, fulfill us, complete us. We do not get married ultimately in order to quote unquote be happy, but rather marriage it should be seen ultimately as a way, as a means to become a better person, as a means to complete our deen, not to complete ourself. And when you complete your deen through marriage, you will find that inshaAllah ta'ala, Allah will gift you with that happiness. But again, there's a difference between a gift and an ultimate purpose. If you make your purpose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you seek only Allah to make you happy, Allah will give you that happiness through different means. And it may be through your marriage, it may be through your friends, but you will always seek it from Him. And you see that those relationships that you have in life are intended to actually help you and are intended to make you a better person. We are going through this life ultimately, why? To reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the best character, with the best and most beautiful heart that we can have. And so every experience in life, every relationship, every path you take should be a character builder, a path that helps you to have a more beautiful heart when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you see your marriage in that way, it will completely transform what your expectations are and what you're willing to do and how much you're willing to give. Of course, explaining, it's very, very important to explain that even though the ultimate purpose of marriage is not to fulfill me, to make me happy, however, that does not mean that if you are in a relationship that is abusive or in a relationship where you are miserable or you are unhappy, that somehow that means that you should just patiently bear it and not try to do anything to improve that. That is not what is meant, but rather, we were talking about ultimate purpose. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the means as well. Allah gives us the tools to try to, change these things. If you have a headache, you should take the means to try to alleviate that pain. If you have a problem in your marriage, you should try to take the means and the tools to try to fix it, to try to make it better, ultimately knowing that all good comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that it is Allah who can mend it. But we take the means to try to fix it. It doesn't mean we just, accept, well, it's making me a better person, so I'm going to not take any means to change it. Part of this path of character building is using the tools that Allah gave us in order to try to better our situation, in order to try to change those things which are not good, which are not right, and we try to change them. This is a principle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger has taught us when he says that if you see something wrong, you should try to change it with your hand. This is a means, this is a tool. And if you cannot change it with your hand, then with your tongue, so speaking out against it. And if you cannot, then at least hate it in your heart. And this is the weakest of faith. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us how to take the means and the tools in order to try to change that which we see that is wrong. Someone writes, I thought that when I would obtain my degree, I would be happy. I wasn't. I thought when I will have a good job and be financially independent, I would be happy, but I am not. The past years, I was thinking I have to get married in order to be happy, and the fact that I'm still not married makes me feel very unhappy. Today, I realize that I first need to find contentment and be happy with who I am and the way I am created, and to accept my life like Allah gave it to me. This is a comment that someone shared in the chat box. It's very profound, and this, I think, reflects a lot of our thinking, which is that we think as soon as I get to this point in life, I'll be happy. As soon as I get this, I'll be happy. As soon as I get that, I'll be happy. If only this could change, I'll be happy. We think that happiness is a destination. Happiness is not a destination. Happiness is a way of living, and it's a way of living that can only be found near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم سبحانك الله وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help all those who are suffering from sadness, or all those who are not able to find that true happiness in the nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask that all those who are in difficult situations, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy on them. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
غرباء 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 غرباء